Thank you so much, Carlos. And thank you all for joining us tonight for our hopefully very lively discussion on the upcoming special election, the November 4th special election. We will be talking a little bit about what the voting options are for folks with disabilities, how long you have to vote, and also what we will be voting on. A little bit later in the discussion, Dora will be going into some really great information on the background of the Proposition 50 and what it will mean depending on whether it passes or it doesn't pass. So um, I will be talking a little bit about the information relating to voters with disabilities, your accessible voting options. First, I want to do a visual description. I am a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair. My daughter would say more salt than pepper these days. But I am wearing a navy blue polka dot shirt with white polka dots. And I use a mobility scooter. I was born with a form of dwarfism, so I am a short statured man. I am currently sitting in my kitchen right now and very, very happy to be here with all of you. So I am just a little bit of starting information. You may, if you are engaged and interested and excited about any of the upcoming elections, you may have started receiving information in your mailbox regarding the upcoming November 4th election. Um, Many folks may have already received their vote by mail ballot. If you are a registered voter, you will automatically be sent a vote by mail ballot for this election. If you have not received it yet, do not fear. Many of the counties are still sending out rounds of mail ballots. So if you haven't, you should be getting it within the next several days. Um, Ballot drop boxes for folks who are completing their vote by mail ballot and want to return it. Ballot drop boxes are already open. They actually opened yesterday, so they are available for folks wanting to return the ballot. Um, In-person voting options for folks who, if any of you are like me, I really like to go vote in person because I like the engagement and the excitement of being there in person and just the atmosphere. Though the in-person voting locations start opening up on October 26th. Depending on what county you live in, your in-person voting options may be different. If you live in a Voters' Choice Act county, you will have the option to vote a lot earlier and a lot sooner than if you live in a traditional polling place county. I would recommend that you just go to your county elections website to get the voter specific information for your particular county. Um, Assistance is available at all vote centers and polling locations. Um, Accessible voting options, in person voting options will be available at every in person location. Ballot marking devices, the voting machines are equipped with different accessibility features to make the voting process easier and allow folks with disabilities to have a more private and independent voting experience. Um, Also, if you are interested in going to vote in person, but for accessibility reasons or convenience purposes, curbside voting is also available for folks at all voting locations in every county. Um, So if you want more information on what the curbside voting options are in your county, you can always contact your county elections office directly. But for many counties, it's fairly straightforward. You can arrive at the voting location, and more often than not, they have signage right posted right out by the curbside when you arrive that will list a phone number if you are interested in that option. So I always recommend folks bring a cell phone if they're interested in doing curbside voting. We also, DRC also provides a voting hotline. It is available year round, 365 days, 24/7 for folks who have voting questions or may need some type of assistance. We particularly promote it during election season. Um, the phone number is 1-888-569-7955, and we will include that in the chat for folks who may need to call on us. And like I said, it is we promote it as it gets closer to elections, but it is available for any questions you may have or information you may need year round. Um, Also, we have a large selection and large variety of publications on different voting topics. We have those available through our website. One of the ones that we particularly promote as it gets closer to election time is our Make a Voting Plan. And it's a way to kind of think ahead, and sort of consider all of your voting options and what is the most accessible and convenient for you, given your particular circumstance. And so it's a really great way to kind of plan ahead and map out how you want to vote, when you want to vote, and where you want to vote. And it's helpful to just sort of think that through and be able to prepare as it gets closer to election time. Um, Also, county specific voting options will vary depending on what county you live in. So, as I mentioned, you may live in a Voters Choice Act county, or you may live in a traditional polling place county. And so I always remind folks of that um, because of the day and age that we live in, sometimes you may hear messaging or advertisements on the radio or TV that may be talking about voting options, when to go vote. But I always remind folks to make sure that you're getting the county specific information that's relevant to you in your city and your county. So always make sure that you're double checking the information that's relevant to you in your city and county. Um, as I mentioned before, voting, if you live in a Voters Choice Act county, will begin starting on October 26th. But even if you live in a traditional polling place county, there may still be early voting options available to you as well. So now we get to the really exciting part of this discussion, where I'm going to introduce one of our DRC's board members. He has been very active in voting, election planning. I first met Wesley my first week about 10 years ago at DRC, when I was getting involved with some of the election planning in LA County. Wesley is based in LA County, does a lot of really great work for voters with disabilities. Um, he's been a project coordinator at the Children's Hospital, LA, since 2006. He serves as a representative with self advocates and their networks and the programs and activities through University of Southern California's USED program. He represents USC's USED at local meetings as um, a representative for the self advocacy statewide self advocacy network. He serves on the State Council on Developmental Disabilities as their chair for the Employment First Committee. He serves, as I mentioned, as on DRC's board of directors. He was also very involved with LA County's Community Voter Outreach Committee and as a member of the LA County's Voting Accessibility Advisory Committee. He is committed to full inclusion of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Wesley likes to read, exercise, travel, and volunteer. His favorite movie is Hoosiers, amazing movie for anybody who's seen it, about underdog high school basketball team based in the state of Indiana. Really amazing movie. And thank you, Wesley, for all that you do. And starting out, I would just I hope that you will talk a little bit about what does it mean to, as a person with a disability, to be engaged and be involved with not only elections but getting out and getting out the vote, making sure folks are doing that and having their voice heard.
Thank you, Gabe, for the wonderful introduction. Hi, my name is Wesley Witherspoon. I'm a middle-aged African American male with short hair. I got a white shirt on, and I'm standing in the bedroom where there's a lot of lightning. So I want to say to everybody out there voting, people with disabilities weren't, prior to the 60s, people with disabilities weren't allowed to vote. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
We're allowed to vote. People actually died for the right to vote. Minorities and women back in the past were allowed to vote. So that's the reason why voting is very exciting. And voting is about your values. It's very important. What's important to you. That's what's very important about voting is what you believe in. And everybody's beliefs is very different. There's 8 billion people in the world. And there's over 600,000 people with intellectual developmental disabilities. And people with disabilities are 20% of the population. So we're a very important block out there for voting. And it's about what you want, and you have the right to write to your newspapers, talk to the mass media about your needs. And that's really, really important. And everybody has a right to do that. We have rights, we have responsibilities as well. So the rights, we get the right to vote, but we have responsibility to follow the same rules as everyone else. And that's really, really, really important. In California, we have 58 counties, so every county is totally different. And there's over 400 cities in California, so it's a lot of different cities. And we have 4 layers of government in the United States. We got the federal, and with the federal, there's 3 branches. There's the judicial Supreme Court. There's 9 Supreme Court justices, and all of them are appointed by the president and nominated by the Congress. It could serve for life, or when to decide to resign or pass away. The second the second branch of government is the presidential, and you vote for that every 4 years, and they get they get 1 term for 4 years. They get maximum 2 terms. So that's what the president has a lot of different powers. He has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of committees, and The president is responsible for signing bills and doing a lot of different actions. And the third level, the third branch of government is legislative, and that's Congress. You have the Senate and House of Representatives. The Senate, you get one term for 6 years. House of Representatives, you get one term for 2 years. You can serve as long as you like. Then state government, we got things as well. State government, you have a governor. That's one branch of government. It's very similar to the president. Then you have the legislative, you have state assembly and the state senate. You have judicial, you have the Supreme Court of California. And those for counties, you have board of supervisors. And for cities, if you let an unincorporated say, your county is one responsible for your services. And for cities, you have mayors and city councils. And the nice thing is we get to vote for these people. So you vote whoever you decide to vote for. And that's part of being a person with disability is your choice what you like. You vote how you feel. And everybody feels differently about certain things. So you vote about how you feel. And I've been doing voter registration for about 20 years. I've been at conferences. I've been across California. I've been across this county of Los Angeles County. I've been to all different areas. I've been to swing areas. I've been to different parts I've been at the Lancaster. I've been at Long Beach. I've been to different parts of LA. So I've seen things are different. Things are very, 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 very different. And just voting is really exciting because it's about your decisions and what you want. And the thing about voting is you don't have to vote on everything. So if there's something you don't understand, you can leave it blank. And you can have a person support you. They can't tell you how to vote. They can tell you what the issues are and who the candidates are. And you make the decision who you want. And that's really important as a voter. We have rights and responsibilities. People with disabilities didn't always have a chance to vote. And voting is very, and there's a lot of different parties. I think there's 7 major parties in California. You can vote for those particular parties and there's different beliefs. And there's a lot of things out in California. California is one of the largest states in the country. I think it's actually the third largest state in size in the country. In terms of population, we got over 39 million people in California. And think about 20% of people, 20% of the population have disabilities. So you do the math, that's like 7 to 8 million people have disabilities in California. So that's the reason why I'm voting for it. It's very, very, very exciting. And you just do what you want to believe in and just what your values are, and you choose what your values are. Don't let your support person or don't let anyone else determine what your values are. It's your decision. Remember that. It's your decision. So any questions about voting?
Wesley, I will just say thank you so much for uplifting that piece, that piece that you mentioned of like you don't have just vote for the things that you feel really passionate about and you care about. And that's because that's huge. And I think I remind folks of that as often as I can, but it sometimes it's something you forget. You feel like you have to vote for everything and you don't. And just focus on those things that you feel are really important. So thank you for uplifting that.
You're welcome. I started being civic engaged when I was in high school. So when I was in high school, I followed the presidential race and of course in 11th or 12th grade, you take classes in political science and government. So that's how you get civic engaged from high school. That's where I got civic engaged. And I was really good at political science. I got a B in college in political science. I had to know about the Constitution and know about the Bill of Rights and about the ideology of politics. And it's very exciting. I've been in Sacramento. I've been to Washington, D.C. in 1990 in Close-Up Foundation. I went to Sacramento. I went to Sacramento several times, and I find very interesting going to Washington D.C. and Sacramento and getting involved with government, whether it's federal government, state government, city government, or county government. So I hope you learn a lot from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wesley. We really appreciate it. And so we now are going to pivot a little bit, talking about what is upcoming for the November election. And so we're going to be, I'm going to introduce the executive director for the League of Women Voters, Dora Rose, excuse me, deputy director for the League of Women Voters of California. Um, Dora focuses on ensuring that all eligible Californians have the information and tools they need to vote with confidence and cast ballots that will be counted. Dora is also the league's advocate, and and this work focuses on the impact through legislation. Her primary goals in California include closing the voter participation gap to ensure that people of color, young people, and people with disabilities have the access and tools to wield their power through voting, and building a more representative democracy that better serves all of California's diverse residents. Dora has been a civil rights litigator, policy advocate, and voting rights activist for over 30 years. Her experience includes holding leadership positions as general counsel and director of voter protection for the Ohio Democratic Party with the Voting Rights Institute and the Center for Election Integrity at Cleveland State University, and as a cooperating attorney with the ACLU of California. Dora is an attorney barred in California, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. So thank you so much, Dora, for joining us and shedding some light a little bit about Prop 50, giving us some background and talking about the resource that I can't promote enough to anybody and everybody who will listen, the Easy Voter Guide. So
Thank you so much, Gabe. And Wesley, that was absolutely fantastic introduction to the importance of voting. My name is Dora Rose, as Gabe said. I am a white woman. I'd like to claim that I'm middle-aged, but unfortunately, my 30 years in the trenches just proves that I'm north of that. I'm a little older than middle-aged. I wear glasses and I have brown hair, no salt in it yet. But that will come soon. And it's just wonderful to be here in community with you all. Can we pull up the slides so that I can sort of just launch right into our presentation? Fantastic. So, why are we having this special election? You know, in a nutshell, in Texas, President Trump urged political leaders like Governor Abbott, the governor of Texas, to redraw congressional maps mid-decade. That means in the middle of a 10-year span. I'll explain that a little bit more in a moment. Specifically to redraw these congressional maps to benefit Republicans. So Governor Newsom, the governor in California, our governor, and our legislature, the California legislature, responded to that by advancing their own maps, that they believe will benefit Democrats. Now, normally redistricting happens only once every 10 years after the census. But because of this strategy, voters are being asked now to decide whether to adopt new congressional maps that our legislature has drawn through Proposition 50, the proposition that you have before you for the November election. So Proposition 50 asks, should California authorize temporary changes to its maps in response to Texas's partisan redistricting? If passed, the legislature's maps would be used until 2030, when the Independent California Citizens Redistricting Commission takes up its role again, resumes its role. Now, I'm going to get into what all of this means. I'm going to break it down for you in just a moment. But next slide, please. I want to back up for a very quick refresher on some of the things that Wesley touched on, the idea of congressional districts. The United States has 435 congressional districts across the country. California has 52 of them. That's based on the fact that we're rather a large state. It's based on our population. So we have 52 congressional districts in California. Now, each district, as Wesley said, elects one representative to the U.S. House for a 2-year term. They serve 2 years at a time before their next election. Now, those representatives, they work in Washington, D.C. They do things like create laws, right? They set policy priorities, and they also help shape the federal budget. Please, let's go to the next slide. Now, on redistricting, and this is going to be a rather quick overview, as I mentioned in the first slide, districts are usually drawn every 10 years after the census. Now, the census is a project that counts everyone that lives in the United States, and they do that count every 10 years so that we know how many people are living here, right? And districts are areas of the state that are drawn with lines on a map so that each one has roughly the same number of people. And we know that because we've just counted all of the people in the United States, including our state, California. Now, mid-decade redistricting, in other words, redistricting within that 10-year period, in the middle of that 10-year period, so after about 5 years, is very unusual, but it is legal. In fact, sometimes courts order it, and states can also act on their own. You've probably heard the term gerrymandering in the context of redistricting. Political gerrymandering is when politicians draw the districts to give their party an advantage. And I'll talk in a moment about how that gets done. The US Supreme Court has ruled that this partisan gerrymandering, drawing those district lines to give their party an advantage, is allowed, although racial gerrymandering is not. So if you were drawing districts to discriminate against certain races, that is not permitted under the law. And you may have heard in the news that several other states are considering or pursuing mid-decade redistricting. But I'm not going to really get into that here. We're going to focus on California. In California, in 2021, after the census, California's Citizens Redistricting Commission drew our current maps. Now, the Citizens Redistricting Commission are an independent body of regular voters who are chosen through a rather lengthy and very careful process of determining if they have the skills to sit on this redistricting commission. Those maps are they're expected to stay in place until 2031, so 10 years after 2021, right? Now, the commission has to follow very strict rules. It can't favor a political party or a political candidate. It must listen to public input about keeping communities and neighborhoods together in the same voting district. So it has to follow some very strict rules when it's drawing these lines. Next slide, please. So what exactly would Prop 50 do? Now we're going to get into the actual proposition that's before you for November. It changes the California Constitution to replace the Commission's 2021 maps with new maps that are drawn by the California State Legislature instead of being drawn by this independent commission. Okay. Now, these legislature-drawn maps would be used for congressional elections in 2026, 2028, and 2030. Every 2 years, right? Up until 2030. It'll also be used for any special congressional elections that might happen between those times. Like if somebody leaves office and there has to be a special election, those legislature drawn maps would also be used for those congressional elections. Now, after the 2030 census, after they do the count again, right, and to determine how many people live in California, the authority for drawing lines will go back to the commission under this Proposition 50. So that's why they say that it's temporary. The authority goes back to the commission, and then the commission starts drawing the lines again. And the commission would return to drawing district lines, again, using those rules that I mentioned that are set out under the law. Now, I'll explain in a moment how you can find the maps to compare the ones that we have now with how they would look under Prop 50. But I want to mention that the measure, Prop 50, also establishes that California formally supports the use of fair, nonpartisan, that means without regard to political party, redistricting commissions nationwide. Okay. So it's in addition to giving us new maps, it would also state that Californians formally support this idea of independent redistricting commissions that we have here in California that are normally used nationally, everywhere. We'd like to see them everywhere. Note that all other maps, like the maps for the state Senate and the state Assembly, will remain the same. Those are not affected by Prop 50. Next slide, please. Okay, so what exactly is Prop 50 going to do with California's congressional maps? Now, I want to make clear that what I'm about to talk about are just projections. They're what people think is likely to happen, and they depend a lot on how voters choose to behave and on turnout. And there's no guarantee that all of the seats that are at issue here are going to flip, or that the margins will change exactly as anticipated or projected. Prop 50 is specifically drawn to change the percentage of registered Republicans and Democrats in many districts. Okay. And what that means is what they anticipate Prop 50 will do, what the people who have introduced Prop 50 anticipate will happen, is 5 districts that are currently held by Republicans would be redrawn to favor Democrats. Okay. 7 Democratic-held districts in competitive, what we call swing areas, would see their Democratic margins strengthened. And some safe Democratic districts would see their margins reduced with fewer Democrats in those areas. They are still considered to be safe for Democrats, but they have, because they had to redistribute Democrats in this map drawing, they have fewer in them. Next slide, please. Okay. So there are 2 maps on this slide, okay? And they compare the state's existing congressional districts with the proposed congressional districts that would be established if voters approve Prop 50. The maps show the partisan, the political lean of districts based on results from the 2024 presidential election. Now, under the current map, California has a mix of Democratic and Republican districts, with Democrats leading along the coastal areas near the ocean, right? And Republicans being stronger in the inland areas away from the ocean. So the proposed map shifts the balance rather dramatically. Most districts turn Democratic, while Republican voters are concentrated into fewer inland seats, leaving far fewer competitive districts overall. So for accessibility, to make it clear what the images on this slide show, the map of the existing districts is on the left, and it shows that Democrats dominate coastal cities, and Republicans hold many inland and Central Valley seats, and several swing districts remain. Okay. Now, the proposed districts on the map on the right shows a very strong Democratic majority statewide. Republicans consolidated into a handful or concentrated into a handful of inland districts, and there are a few competitive seats. There are fewer competitive seats. Now, if you want to get a look at the specific vote percentages in these districts, you can find that this on Ballotpedia. And you hover your cursor over a district to get that information. So next slide, please. Okay, so what are the fiscal effects or the financial effects if Prop 50 passes? So counties run elections, and the state oversees those elections. Because most congressional districts in California would change at least some under the new maps, county and state election officials would need to update election materials. Those updates would result in a one-time cost to counties of up to a few $1,000,000 statewide, and then also a one-time cost to the state of roughly $200,000. Now, for the state, that's less than 1/10 of 1% of its $220 billion budget, which pays for services like schools and healthcare and prisons. So it's a very small percentage of the $220 billion budget. Special election campaign costs will be likely over $200 million, but that's not something that we consider a financial effect or a fiscal effect to the state or the counties themselves. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty here. What are supporters and opponents saying about Prop 50? We'll talk about the supporters first, and then we'll talk in the next slide about the opponents. Now, I want to make clear that these arguments come from supporters and opponents as they are published in the Secretary of State's official voter information guide, the one that most people get in the mail. Now, we simplify for comprehension and for plain language so that people can really understand what these arguments are. That's what the Easy Voter Guide does. But we do not change the arguments. We don't editorialize. We don't correct them. We just make sure that they are clear and understandable. Now, on the left side of the screen here, I've listed the supporters who signed the official ballot arguments. They are Governor Gavin Newsom, Representative Nancy Pelosi, Senator Alex Padilla, Sarah Sadwani, who is a commissioner on the 2020 Citizens Redistricting Commission, Jody Hicks, who is the CEO and president of Planned Parenthood, and Nikki Davis Milewski, who's the president of the Sacramento Teachers Association. There are other supporters, including Barack Obama, the California Professional Firefighters Association, the California Federation of Teachers, and the California Democratic Party, among others. Okay. So what are the arguments of these supporters? Well, the supporters of Prop 50 say that Prop 50 is a short-term, temporary emergency plan that is needed to stop President Trump's attempt to unfairly rig next year's congressional election. And rig means to manipulate. Okay? They say that it gives voters the ability to approve the district lines in this election. It creates fair maps that reflect California's diverse communities and protect our voices from partisan gerrymandering. Remember, we talked about partisan gerrymandering. It keeps California a leader in fair elections by preserving its independent redistricting system. And it strengthens democracy by making sure that Republicans don't have an unfair advantage in Congress. Okay. Next, that's what the supporters say. Next slide, please. Okay. So now we're going to talk about what the opponents say. On the left of this slide is a list of the people who signed the official ballot arguments in opposition to Proposition 50. There are 3 rotating chairs, so they took turns, of the 2010 Citizens Redistricting Commission who signed the ballot arguments in opposition. They're Cynthia Dye, Jeannie Rea, and Jody Filkins Weber. Okay. Other people who also signed the ballot arguments in opposition are Roberto Moncada, who is a board member with United Latinos Action, Faith Bautista Tamashiro, who is president with the National Diversity Coalition, and Taylor Shorty, who's a board member with Community Repower Movement. It's also opposed, and you may have heard this in the news, by Charles Munger Jr., by Arnold Schwarzenegger, our former governor, by former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, the California Business Roundtable, and the Republican Party of California, among others. Okay? And here are the arguments that the opponents of Prop 50 make. That's what is on the right side of this slide. They say Prop 50 is a power grab by politicians that undoes fair election reforms and returns California to gerrymandered districts that benefit politicians over voters. It replaces an open public process with secretive political backroom deals. It hurts fair representation by dividing neighborhoods and weakening minority voices in elections. It lets politicians control district lines for years and could open the door to permanent, not temporary, control. And it costs taxpayers $200 million when the state is cutting funding to important programs because of budget problems. Next slide, please. So to be clear, when you decide how to vote on Prop 50, as Wesley said, this is your decision. A yes vote supports amending the California Constitution to allow the state to use a new congressional map for 2026 through 2030. A no vote opposes the constitutional amendment, keeping the existing congressional map in place for use in elections from 2026 through 2030. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, I want to quickly run through some resources that are available to you. And I think Paul is going to put at some point the links to these. The Easy Voter Guide is an online and paper publication with an easy explanations of registering, of voting, and what to expect in statewide elections. We put it out for every statewide election. It's designed for new and busy voters, and it delivers unbiased, straightforward, plain language summaries of statewide ballot measures. The explanations I've given you here today are pulled directly from the Easy Voter Guide. We have this guide community reviewed to make sure that it meets our standards of being easy to understand and readable. And it's also courtesy reviewed by the California's Legislative Analyst Office. It's available in 5 languages in English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Korean. And it's also posted in accessible plain text and available in audio format online. So this year, we didn't anticipate this, but we have produced a special one to help explain Prop 50, and you can read it at easyvoterguide.org. Next slide, please. Now, the official state voter information guide is mailed out to all registered voters, and it's mailed out by the Secretary of State's office. It's available in 9 languages, in accessible formats, and online at voterguide.sos.ca.gov. It has pages of maps, so you can see how your congressional districts could be impacted, might change, right? Warning for Los Angeles County. Unfortunately, California mailed the state voter guide with a mistake on the statewide map. Representative George Whiteside's district in the San Fernando and Antelope Valleys was mislabeled as District 22 instead of District 27. Detailed regional maps in the same guide, though, are correct. And the Secretary of State has mailed out corrective notices already to every household that receives a voter guide. Next slide, please. But I think actually one of the best sources to see how the new map might impact you is through CalMatters website, where you can enter your address to see the before and after maps for your congressional district. And that can be found at calmatters.org/California-voter-guide-2025. And we are at the end of the slides.
Thank you so much, Dora, just for the really in-depth overview of Proposition 50, but also lifting up the Easy Voter Guide and as a continued resource. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, I promote it as often as I can when it comes to election season, just because it does give that very helpful plain language explanation and also gives some really good background and history on each of the ballot measures or propositions as they're appearing on the ballot, and gives folks a lot of really helpful information to kind of prepare how they want to vote. So again, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right. Well, I think we've reached the portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Sam, who has been monitoring questions as they've come into the chat and been submitted by all of you. Thank you in advance for those who've submitted questions. And so I will hand it over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Gabe. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us tonight. This is Sam Mickens. I'm the Director of Communications for DRC, and I'll be moderating the Q&A portion. If you would like to ask a question, you have two options. First, you can click on the Raise Your Hand button and be called on to ask your question live. The option to raise your hand is under Reactions at the bottom or the top of your screen. Click on Reactions, then click on the Raise Your Hand button. If you choose this option, we will call on you and give you the ability to unmute yourself to ask your question. You must unmute yourself. If you do not have access to the Zoom video controls and are calling in by telephone, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise your hand. Second, you could type your question into the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. Lastly, some reminders for those asking questions. Please speak clearly and at a measured pace. Please take a pause while speaking, and especially after and in between saying your name or any company name. Saying the full name of something instead of using acronyms is also helpful to our interpreters. Be mindful of personal information you share. This town hall is recorded and will be made available on our website, so it is optional to share your name or turn on your camera. And with that all said, I know that we did have one hand raised earlier from Robert Taylor. And let's go ahead and call on Robert.
Okay, I'm going to go slow for this and pause in between. So my name is Robert Mylan Taylor with Redwood Coast Regional Center. So I have with me the statewide special election booklet that I got from the library here in Clear Lake as of a couple days ago. And one of the things on page 27 of the booklet, it's a thing called the Remote Accessible Vote by Mail. And it's a system that can provide an accessible option for voters like us who have disabilities to receive our ballots at home and then mark them independently and privately before sending them back to the elections officials at our register of voters. For our disabled community, can you explain a little bit more about the remote accessible vote by mail and what it means for us individuals with disabilities to receive our ballots at home, mark them independently and privately before sent back to our election officials?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for the question, Robert. Yes, so remote accessible vote by mail, or RAVBM, is an option for voters who may be at home but have access to you need access to the internet, and most importantly, access to a printer to be able to use the this option. But what you do is you download you're sent a link to your ballot, to your specific ballot, and you download that onto your computer. And then you are able to review and mark your choices using any assistive devices or assistive technology that you may use through your own home computer. Or if you don't use any assistive technology, but you are using just your own home computer, whether it's a laptop or a PC, you can mark your choices, and then it allows you to review all of the selections that you've made. And then after you are done, it gives you the option to print out your completed ballot. So all of the choices, all of the selections that you've made, you then print those out, and then you can return them using the prepaid envelope, return envelope that you receive with all of your vote by mail information. Or you can go and drop it off in person to any of your county's ballot drop box locations, or you can go in person to drop it off at your county elections office. So, as the only thing that I always remind folks is sure that it is postmarked on or before election day, and because a lot of folks are concerned about the return of any mail that you send off. I recommend folks do it as early as possible, just to make sure that your ballot gets received by your county elections office with enough time to be processed, along with all of the other ballots.
Okay, thank you, Gabe, for answering this question for all of us. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Robert. A few other questions. There is just sort of a nuts and bolts question. Will the language to redistrict remain in place until gerrymandering ends, or just until 2030? And I don't know if Dora, you want to.
It will remain in place until 2030, at which point the Independent Redistricting Commission under Prop 50 would be slated to start drawing the lines again.
This is a slightly more involved question that was submitted earlier. Explain the pros and cons for deviating from the constitutional process approved by voters in 2008, when voters approved Prop 11 and created the 14-member commission for determining redistricting.
I'm concerned that that gets us into advocacies, and this is a purely educational event, so I don't think
You'll abstain.
I don't think I can really answer that.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is sort of a broader voting rights question, Gabe, maybe if you want to take this, but there's a question, can my son still vote before and after being conserved if it's currently in process?
So it is possible, depending on the type of conservatorship. that he is under. Folks who are conserved may still be eligible to vote and may still have the right to vote. The qualifications for being able to or being eligible to vote are if you, as a conserved individual, understand what it means to vote, just understand the process of voting, and are able to communicate a desire to vote. And if you meet those two qualifications, you should be eligible. If for whatever reason their right to vote has been taken away, there is a process in place to petition a judge in the court of law to reassess their eligibility and potentially reinstate their voting rights. DRC that is something that we assist individuals with if they are interested in exploring that. So you can feel free to reach out to our voting hotline. That is a question that we have received in the past, just wanting to get more information about that process. So that is something that we can assist an individual with.
Okay, another sort of general voting rights question that we received, and this the question is, my mom's renewal was held until she declared a party. Why is that significant? But maybe a better way to approach that question is that normal? Is that something that is a commonplace issue, or is that something unique or out of the ordinary that this person experienced?
It depends. There is the option when you register to vote to register as no party preference. So that is available. That can affect what elections you're able to vote in, because particular primaries are designated for specific parties. And so depending on how you're registered, may impact what elections you're able to vote in. But you should be eligible to vote in certain elections, even if you don't.
And in this special election, presumably, right?
Yeah, you should be eligible to vote, because it's not based on party, because you're voting specifically on this Prop 50. So
yeah, but I guess if I'm understanding this question, they're saying that their mother was not able to renew their registration without declaring a party, which seems like it would be an error, right?
yeah, that you should be eligible to update your voter registration and not have to declare a specific party.
Yeah,
I mean, there is a box that you can check on the voter registration card that says, you're registering as no party preference. So
yeah. So perhaps if they're encountering this error repeatedly, they should call the hotline.
yeah, they call the hotline, or you can always reach out to whatever county elections office that
Right.
you're currently residing in.
Yep. I think that's about it for the questions that we received, unless anybody else who's on here right now has a question for our panel. And if not, any final thoughts, Gabe?
I will just say thank you all so much. Thank you to Wesley and to Dora for being amazing speakers, sort of igniting the base and firing folks up, because one of these things that we all sort of weren't expecting an election to happen this year, and the fact that it is, and the fact that we're getting interest and engagement of advocates and just the general public speaks to the strength of this process and how important it is to get out there and have your voice heard. Whether you are a person with a disability, whether you are not, just make sure you're doing your part to have your voice heard and to make your vote count. And thank you again, all of you, so much for joining us tonight. And feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. Take a look at the Easy Voter Guide. As I said, it's an amazing resource. We also, DRC has many different publications for folks who have questions about different voting topics. Feel free to reach out to us if you need information, assistance. But again, thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and hope everyone has a fantastic evening.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Good night.